Hello and welcome to this edition of Phantom Sports Features. I'm Luke Morris along with senior wrestler Tom Hammaker. Today we'll be profiling the wrestling team for the Phantoms. And Tom, let's just start talking about the top teams in the Pac-10.
Alright, so your top teams are going to be Boyertown's probably the best team, Springford, probably the second best team, and they recently just wrestled together, and Boyertown won by a pretty good margin, so that just tells you how good Boyertown is. Upper Perks, always a very solid team. Owen J. Roberts always has a few good wrestlers, always very solid overall. But the whole Pac-10 in general is just a really solid division. Within the state, actually, it's pretty well known for the wrestling.
And how do you feel when you go to these schools that you know that their teams are really good? How do you feel when you enter their gyms?
It's terrible. I'm not gonna lie. Mentally, it's very tough to go in. A lot of guys, what they do is they freak themselves out. They'll look up who they're wrestling. If you're going against Boyertown, you see your guys like are really good. You might be a regional qualifier, a state qualifier, which is really high up there in the postseason. You kind of freak yourself out. You go into the gym, lights are all off, and some schools like Upper Perk, they have a spotlight, so they turn all the lights off, and it's just spotlight on the mat. So it can be a little overwhelming, but you kind of just get over that and focus on the match itself as opposed to all the outlying factors.
All right, let's bring the conversation back to Phoenixville wrestling team. Where do you see some strengths and where do you see some room for improvement on the team?
Strengths, I think the coaching, brand new coaches, brand new head coach, same assistant coach as last year. He's a great guy, really brings in a new style and new improvements to the team. Really likes to work individually with kids as opposed to group, really get that one-on-one connection with kids, which I think is really good. Weaknesses is they're still a young team, still a lot of immaturity, but that comes with young and growing up. But I think this coach can kind of turn things around with that. So I'm hoping if I can come back, next year or in a few years when I'm in college, just see how the wrestling team is, that they've showed large amounts of improvement.
Mm-hmm. If we talk about wrestling as a sport in general, what makes a sport such a difficult thing to do?
Well, I think every wrestler can go on for a few hours about this. I'll keep it short though. It's pretty much the ultimate sport. So you're really just competing against another guy, using as much energy as you can, using every muscle in your body 100% of the time against another guy doing the exact same thing. So it's really all of your power against all of his power, and it's just two colliding forces. It's not all physical, a lot of it's mental too. There's strategy going into it. You can't just go out there, use all your energy in the first period, but by the end of the third period or even at the end of the first period, you're huffing and puffing. Your forearms are burning just from gripping his hands. Your body's on fire by the end of the mat. It's hard to explain, but you're just using everything you got against another guy who's using everything he's got.
And you talked about how it was physical and mental. How much of that is mental and how much of that is physical?
Well, I think I mentioned kids like to psych themselves out earlier. And that comes part of the mental game. If you come in, you're not going to win if you think you're going to lose. You've got to wrestle like you're going to win. Whether your guy is good, sometimes just not getting pinned is a win because you want to minimize the amount of team points that the other team gets. So the physical strength obviously very important. You got to do a lot of your push-ups and pull-ups and weightlifting in the off season because physical dominance is a factor, but skills big factor, and thinking you can win is also wrestling like you're gonna win is also a huge part.
So if we take this over to pre-wrestling, what do you need to do in order to get into your own weight class? Talking about making weight, and what do you need to do that?
Making weight, everyone's got their own sort of keys and strategies to that, whether it's just cut your diet in about half is pretty much what I do. Watch what you drink. There's kids who will eat and drink and then just go to the sauna the night or 2 nights before and lose as much water weight as they can. So that's kind of personal. I can't really speak for everyone there, but that comes into the whole mental thing because we had a tournament 2 days after Christmas. I couldn't really eat too much for Christmas because I had to watch my weight. So that there's not only a mental part before a match or going into a match, it's all the time.
Well, Tom, numbers have always been an issue for the Phantoms. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a pretty tough sport to commit to. It's not just 2 hours every day after school. It's all the time. You're watching your weight. You're watching what you drink. Obviously, what you drink, what you eat. Then you got practice after school, tournaments on Saturdays, matches on Saturdays, or practice on Saturday. Like Saturdays, always you got something. And I think it gets grueling to kids. That 2 hours of practice is just a tough practice. I mean, think about it. You're cutting what you're eating, cutting what you're drinking. You're low on energy. You got to go home and do schoolwork. And I think it's just hard for kids to commit to that because our numbers dwindle from the start of the season to the end of the season. It's not just at the start of the season we have low numbers. So I think the sport as a whole is just a tough sport for kids to connect to and get into.
All right, and over this current season right now, what have been some highlights for you during the time you've been wrestling?
Pretty much any win, I'd say, because you work so hard in practice. Getting a win, it's very rewarding. Or just wrestling well. Like if you go up against a really good kid and you know you did your best and you didn't get pinned, you stayed in it with the whole match, and even though you lost, personally you know you did your best and you didn't really fail yourself or your team, and that's honestly a really good feeling, and getting your hand raised at the end of a match is really pretty much the best feeling you can ask for. I mean, that's why you're out there wrestling, and that's what you're working for.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard you've been wrestling for a long time, and this is your senior year now.
Yeah.
Do you think that you're going to miss wrestling after this year?
Oh, definitely. I started in 7th grade, and it kind of becomes part of your culture. Obviously, every winter, there's nothing else on my mind but wrestling because I'm always cutting weight. I always got it after school. It's every Saturday I got practice or a match or a tournament. So obviously, like next winter, it'll be weird for me because I won't have wrestling. I won't be cutting weight. I won't be having practice with the same guys I've been practicing with since 7th grade, and it'll be a change. And I think I'll miss it and miss the connections I've had or made through it.
All right, well, that's all the questions we have for you today.
All right,
Thanks for coming out, Tommy. I'm Luke Morris, along with wrestler Tommy Hammaker. We'll see you next time.